Good to be here with you all. Yes. As always, I welcome you into this space in the here and now. A couple of announcements. This Wednesday, I'll be offering two meditations. One at around lunchtime US, and it'll be evening in Europe. And then we'll also have our normal evening meditation. So I hope you can join us for either or both. I try to do those once a month, two meditations in a day, so more people can join. Yes, okay, very good. Let's see here. Just letting everyone get into the room and just looking around, seeing your beautiful faces. And so I'm going to invite you to do this, just to close your eyes. And right here in this moment, I'm going to invite you just to ask yourself, where am I at? Where am I at? Of course, it's a little bit of a trick question. The proper answer is I am here. But then I'll ask you, is that true? Are you here? Are you in your head wanting something? Are you fantasizing? Are you thinking about work tomorrow or yesterday or what somebody said? Where am I at? Where is my attention now? And I invite you to join me in the silence of this moment. It's the quiet peacefulness of this moment. And to pay attention to the stillness that's here, the openness that's here, the spaciousness that's here. And experience it directly, and you tell me, what is that like for you? As you feel into this space, the silence, the stillness, what is that like? Now, how big is this silence? And please don't think of silence as simply the absence of sound, but rather silence is the space in which all sound arises, the space in which all thought arises. So spiritual awakening, enlightenment has more to do with where you place your attention than it has to do with the years you've had on the path or the practices you're doing. But rather, where do you place your attention? Is your attention on the innate goodness and divinity of your being? Is it on the spaciousness of consciousness? Is your attention acknowledging the radiance that you are, the radiance of this moment? Or is your attention on your thinking mind? If your attention is wrapped up in thought, well, you'll be wrapped up in thought. You'll be on the wheel of samsara. So where is your attention? It's a beautiful inquiry. Is it here or now? And if you invite attention, not to be so focused outwardly, that's what the ego does. The ego's attention is focused outwardly, scanning the environment for sounds or noises or good guys or bad guys, whatever it is. Scanning our thoughts, scanning the refrigerator for something to eat. Or is our attention resting upon itself? And for any of you whose attention is outward, I encourage you to play this game with me. If you turn awareness upon itself, what do you experience directly? What do you experience directly when you turn awareness upon itself? Are you awake and are you aware of the immense, silent, non-dramatic divinity of this moment? And so if you like, you can open your eyes or keep them closed. But I want everyone to hear this clearly, that to be awake, the most simplest of terms, has everything to do with where you place your attention. If attention is lost in thought and lost in emotion, lost in your character or personality fixation, it's lost in your role or your identity, it's lost in ancestral trauma or politics or any of this kind of stuff, you won't be awake to what you are. You won't be awake to what you are. But if you just take this simple step where you pay attention to what's here, and like right here, if you have sensitive ears, maybe you can hear coming from my microphone some barking dogs in the background. And this is what the ego is trained to do, is pay attention to those barks, to be alerted, to kind of tense up a little bit when you hear a barking dog. That's normal. I was walking my two little puffballs earlier today, actually just about an hour ago, and one of my dogs is really sweet and the other one is really sweet, but he acts tough around other dogs. And so if I see another dog, my inner alert system, the egoic nature, swiftly reaches down and picks up my little friend Buster, and I hold him close to my heart so he doesn't run off and get eaten by another dog. And that's appropriate. But just as quickly as that alert comes on, after I act, I let go of the alert. I let go of the tension. I let go of that heightened sense of physical egoic awareness. And again, I notice In that moment, the warmth of Buster and his beating heart. I notice the hugeness of the sky, the leaves falling from the trees, the cool wind on my face. So we notice what's here, what's actually here. What's actually here. And so that can be interpreted different ways. What's actually here in the environment. So you're not in your head lost in thought and fantasy. So you notice what's here in the outward world. And in a similar way, like if you want to know the weather, you can go to weather.com and there'll be some kind of computer generated report about weather. If you really want to know the weather, you go outside. You go outside and you see, oh, it's raining. I looked earlier today and it said there's a 1% chance of rain where I live. And then I thought, geez, 1%, probably not going to rain. And see, that's the world of illusion. Then right before this evening's meeting, I started to hear raindrops on my roof. I ran outside to bring our laundry in. And so that's being in reality. It is raining, not 1%. It is. It is. So we can be awake to what's actually happening. We can take it another step back. And we can be awake to what we are. And if we stay in these two places, awake to what's actually happening and awake to what we are, 95% of your suffering will dissolve. And there's the only little quick disclaimer I'll say there, unless you've been living with just ridiculous chronic physical pain. Mental, emotional, psychological pain, which makes up the majority of human beings suffering, greatly diminishes. Greatly diminishes when you are awake to what's actually happening. And Zen, we call this reality. And simultaneously awake to the reality of you. Not the story of you, not the character of you, not the character fixation, not the astrological sign. But awake to what you are. And it's always a great question. Well, what is it that I am? What's here all the time? Like, what is consciousness? What is consciousness? As you feel into it directly. Like, what is consciousness? And is it separate from the sky? Is it separate from the earth? Is it separate from God? Is it separate from love? Is it separate from light? Is it separate from peace? Is it separate from power? Is it separate from Buddha nature? And as you see, the answer is no, it's not separate. Not separate. If you're feeling that it's separate, that means you're identified with your thinking mind. And so, a compassionate question to ask, if you find yourself identified with your thinking mind, is, what do I need so I can relax and let go of this? What do I need? Is it safe to let go of my thinking mind? In this moment, yeah, probably so. I assume none of us are at war right now. We may be at war with the past or at war with the future, but it's safe to let go of your thinking mind. It's safe to experience the spaciousness of the room, the space in which the sound of my voice arises. And so, if we want to get out of our head, we have to either come into the environment and experience it directly. And the environment is always made up of immense space. Immense space. And that should be fairly easy to realize unless you're drowning. Then it might be a little bit more difficult. But most moments of the day, you're just sitting in a room that's spaciously empty. If you go outside, the sky is spaciously empty. And if you look at the very nature of your mind, the fabric of your mind, it's spaciously empty. And then occasionally it has little blips of thoughts. But those thoughts, if you notice those thoughts, they can't fill up the space of consciousness. They can't fill up the space of consciousness. The same way, like when I was a teenage boy, I used to do this funny thing is I'd get in the car and I'd put in a tape. Some of you might not know what a tape is, but I used to play music. Put in a tape, a cassette, and I'd turn the stereo up as loud as it could go, just blaring punk rock music. And I'd always smile because I knew even the screaming music that I was listening to, the guitars, the drums, the bass, the singer screaming in that microphone, blasting my eardrums out, could not fill up the silence. Nothing can fill up the silence. And when you realize that, there's a great relief throughout your being. Because you realize there's room for everything. Room for everything, even difficulty, pain, trauma, heartache. There's room for everything. So anyways, if you have a question, please put it in the chat. I think I have one or two emailed questions that I'll get to. And I just want to let everyone know I'm doing this new thing where in the Zoom room, I'm recording as usual, but also I'm live streaming on YouTube, but I just put it in a place in YouTube where nobody can see it. And until I edit it a little bit, but just rest assured, none of your faces will be on YouTube. And I'll save the, how should I say this? The live questions just for the end, just because of recording purposes. And it takes a lot of effort to make it so, you, like your face, is not broadcast on the internet. And so I'm trying something new to make it a little bit easier. And some of you may have noticed that I'm really behind in my uploads. So I had a couple things happen. My assistant, her sister died, which slowed things down with my support. And just because I haven't been feeling so well, I haven't been so able to upload everything. All right. Let's see. Hi, Craig. I struggle with a desire to reach out to a teacher when overwhelmed, but more often than that, I see no reason to and know it's deeply an ego story, and I feel no reason to even speak. Can you touch on the balance of humility, comfort, understanding, and stillness? Yeah, a lot of people on the path really just want validation. a lot of people don't actually have questions. They just want to be validated. Because for many people, people unlike me who got to grow up with a spiritual teacher, we don't always have someone right there to validate us, to honor us, to look us in the eyes and say, you're doing good, or you are good, you are divine. Like, not everyone has that. So it's a common thing to want to reach out. There's a lot of times when I'd reach out to Adya and I just wouldn't have anything to say, but I just started talking about something. Just made up an excuse not to connect with him. And he even said he did the same thing when he first met Gangaji, when he was a young student on the path. He didn't have a question either, but he just reached out to her just to say hi, or just to be validated, just to be seen and honored in the light. And so there's nothing wrong with it. I certainly did it. And so, I think so many people on the path are really quick to judge themselves for doing something wrong. And I encourage you to let go of that. Because there's no reason to judge oneself. I mean, life gives us enough feedback throughout the day. Will let us know if we missed a spot. I was out painting today, and the sunlight showed me all the places that I missed the spot. So I just went back again, did it again. So life will tell you, you don't need to judge yourself and attack yourself. And so please be kind. Be kind to yourself. And what you'll find is you'll be kind to others. There's more space and more love, more light flowing through your system if you're kind to yourself. One of the things I'd like to talk about just a little bit more as we begin to awaken on the path, at some point as we mature, we realize that this whole thing is really just a setup. Like in the beginning of the path, we're looking for what God can do for us, what life can do for us, what we can get out of spirituality. Like, oh yeah, I'm going to get to feel really blissful, or I'm going to get to feel so good. And I want that. I want to feel so good. And as you mature on the path, you do feel much better normally, most often. Not always, but most often. But you begin to discover that, really God is wanting you to show up to work. And really the question is, what can I give to God? What can I give to life? What can I give? And at first it's an egoic giving, like a giving up. And as that begins to surrender and melt and dissolve, you see, you just give of your time. And then God uses you, lives through you, speaks through you, acts through you. It's not even that you are doing. So I don't want the ego to hear that it has a new job. But rather, as you become empty and free of self, then in a real sense, you become a conduit of giving, of serving, of attending to. And so it's really a setup. God kind of tricks us into this. So we wake up to be a servant of God, a servant of grace. So anyways, I swore I had some more email questions and I copied and pasted them. I don't know where I put them. So forgive me if I missed your question again this week. Okay, if anyone has a question in the chat, please put it in there. And let's see. Yeah, I can't find it. So I apologize if I lost your question. Let's see here in the chat. Is awareness aware of itself or not? I see awareness is not aware of itself, and it's unclear to me. I don't get it. Is awareness aware of itself? Well, I guess it all depends. You know, if you are in awareness, living in awareness, as awareness, then of course awareness is awake to itself. But if you're disconnected from awareness, then it feels as if there's a division. So in the ultimate reality, awareness is always awake to itself, through in and throughout creation. And what you begin to discover is that when you do wake up, oh, this awareness has been here in every moment of my life, every moment of every life. But that doesn't do you any good if you're not there to witness it. In fact, as you come online with it, that's the real game changer. Because you'll feel that in your experience directly. Is awareness aware of itself? Jeez, it sounds like some silly Zen koan. Of course, awareness is aware of itself. And you'll even find, like I can remember when I had this moment where it was almost like when I first woke up that God was celebrating and crying at the same time, like crying, like, oh my God, it took forever in this one. And celebrating, like, praise God. Just thank God, that someone here, something here can see its own beauty, can see what it is. And so anyways, so if we have a question like this, we're saying, I don't get it, the I that doesn't get it, that's the I that will never get it. That's the I of the ego. The ego doesn't wake up. The ego does, some people say it dissolves, which is true. But one of the great things the ego does is, in a sense, it just falls into alignment in the same way that, when you're 65 or 67 and you retire, at some point, like a couple weeks or a couple months after retirement, you just fall into the vibrational frequency of not doing, not caring, and just, kicking back and just letting life live itself. Letting life live itself. Letting life live itself in you, as you. So it's a great question to ask. What would that be like? To let life live itself in me and as me. Like, what would have to change? Would anything big have to change in this moment in order to allow life live itself? Like, what would I have to let go of? What would I have to surrender? And keep in mind, God does not want your house. God does not want your belongings. God does not want your car. Normally, God does not want your partner. So those aren't normally the things we have to surrender. Normally, we have to surrender our judgment of ourselves, our judgment of our partner, our judgment of our home. It's too big, too small. It's someone told me the other day, I can't remember if I if I said this or not, but someone told me that houses with garages facing the street are not classy. A classy house has a driveway you can enter in from the side. I said, oh, I did not know that. I do not have a classy house. And so this is what God wants of us, is for us to let go of silly, egoic judgments and assumptions. Silly egoic assumptions and judgments which veil reality. Okay. Let's see here. I'm going to turn off the YouTube live stream. And YouTube people, I'll see you next week. And then we'll open it up to real questions right now, or live questions. Okay. Sorry, everyone. I'm getting used to all the button pushing technology here. Okay, let's hear from Kyle. Kyle, we haven't heard from you in a long time. Let me see if I can hear you. Are you there?
Yeah, hello, can you hear me?
Yeah. Hi, Kyle. Good to see you.
Good to see you guys too. My question is related to inner child work,
Okay.
and joy, especially like sensing joy at in like the adult world and at work, at family events, yeah, things like that.
Is it hard for you to find joy or experience joy?
At work, yeah. I guess I'm a high school teacher, and so when I'm interacting with students, I do sense joy. Um, but sometimes like the politics of the work can kind of um, stress me out a little bit.
Sure. Do you have a thought that you should be experiencing joy when you're um, engaged in the politics of uh, your school district, or the principal and all the teachers? Like, is there thought that there should be joy here?
No, no, not not like judging myself like I should be feeling joy, but like more like curious, like why am I not? Why is joy not here? Um,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. And so okay, that's a fair question. And so, you know, we have all these ideas that every quality of God should be immediately present in every moment. And just by the nature of consciousness, the nature of experience, it isn't always that way. There's different seasons in life where we're going into fall, and so like starting to get cold here in Colorado. And so I shouldn't expect lots of I shouldn't expect warmth to be here all the time. I shouldn't expect, real bright sunny days to be here in every moment. And so we want to be careful that we don't have any of that type of thinking. But you said a word that can open us to joy, which is curiosity. Like I have a 7-year-old at my house, and she's just like vibrantly wild all the time. Like she had to drag her daddy to the Halloween store today, and I was like, oh my God, like we're doing this. And there was, and she was just like so enthused and excited at the goblins and the clowns and all the different, I don't know what you call it, Halloween paraphernalia. Decoration is the word. And of course, like as a kid, because you don't take anything, or she doesn't take anything. She's not a serious child. So she takes nothing seriously. And so the less you take things seriously, you're going to experience more and more joy. Now, if you're in a teacher meeting, you might be taking things seriously. And that's probably part of your job, is to take things seriously.
Definitely.
I can tell you this, like when I was a high school teacher for a brief moment in history, I did not take teacher meetings seriously. The first thing I was absolutely shocked because I realized that, like, I was a really young teacher. I was like 19 or 20. I got a job in college teaching. And I realized these adults are just children in adults' bodies. And so I was shocked, but then that had me really lighten up and loosen up. So I didn't take anything they said seriously. And then eventually I just decided to stop going to the meetings, which didn't earn me any respect in the local school system among my peers or the principal. I just didn't go to the meetings anymore. I just said, this is a waste of my time. And, I'd go on a walk instead. We had a river just outside my school. And so I just go down by the river and go for a walk and come back and teach the kids. And so, this desire for joy that you have, I mean, oftentimes, like the way I would interpret that would be, I have a desire to live in reality. And the problem with working for anyone, like any kind of system, institution, whatever, is that reality is going to be imposed upon you, and you're going to be expected to bow before that reality, to take it seriously. And me, I just had a really hard time doing that for the entirety of my life. Like I love the Catholic Church as a little boy, but the institution, like I love the church itself because I walked in and I felt the immediacy of grace as soon as I walked in the church. But the institution of the church is like, yeah, I didn't have any respect at all for the institution of the church. I had respect for the mystics, that came from that tradition. But and so, most spiritual people are going to have an inner rebel within them. And, it takes a rebellious nature to ask these big questions. Like, what is reality? And joy, of course, is an aspect of reality. And in a very simple way, really toned down way. Like most people think of joy as like this heavenly thing, and we're going to be dancing for joy and all that kind of silliness. But if you just notice in any moment, like, well, what makes up joy? It's kind of like a silent, warm radiance, right? And so it's a good question. Like, can I feel this silent, warm radiance in every moment? Oh yeah, of course. Of course it's here. But if you're not feeling a silent, warm radiance, you'd be dead. You might not be noticing it. And so I might just take it down a notch, like the word joy, if I'm in a teacher meeting, and just noticing a silent, warm radiance within my own heart, within the space of the room, within the other teachers. And, for a lot of the time, like when I see people being crazy, I laugh, almost in a, I don't want to say mischievous way, but more in just kind of like it's like laughing at the silliness of life. I'm just like, oh my God. And that, if we're laughter and there's lightheartedness, we're more likely to be in that realm of like a silent joy. And so, it's important to really investigate. Like if I'm not experiencing joy or the silent radiance, well, is there something heavy I'm thinking about? Is there something I'm fighting with? Like right now, it's because I'm still struggling to heal. My body feels really bad most of the day, like the physical body. If I give my full attention to my body, I just be like, geez, I just want to die. But if I allow my awareness to rest upon itself while simultaneously the body feels bad, I have fatigue and this type of thing. But I'll feel subtle radiance and joy just sitting there doing nothing. Just sitting there. And it's like, oh, look at that. Look at that. And so, did you have any more nuance or anything else around that question, Kyle?
Um, just kind of a random thing. Like, I could probably learn from some of my students, like how to, like, maybe their childlike innocence can kind of teach me also.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, the big thing with innocence is, you know, I don't want to say the opposite of innocence, but I'll just say it. The opposite of innocence is probably seriousness. It
Mm.
is being, or seriousness shuts down innocence. So if you notice yourself being really serious, you know, there's probably a contraction there. And because of that contraction, you don't feel that warm radiance. And the other thing too, you know, just to give yourself a little bit of slack in that department. I mean, when you're a teacher and you're supposed to kind of hold the space for the classroom and you have a bunch of unruly high school kids, sometimes you have to put on the serious face, you know, and it takes great skill to have the serious face on, but inwardly just being like completely relaxed, because, you know, the kids have to believe in the serious face, you know, they have to believe that they will get in trouble. With me, I could never keep up a serious face. And so I had like real terrible classroom management because the kids would just be going bonkers, you know, because they just knew I was a pushover. And, you know, I mean, we just had a good time. And we probably had too much fun in my classroom. And it wasn't heavy on learning in the sense of like academics, but it was definitely a safe place for all the kids to be. And we'd laugh and smile and joke. And, you know, there was just a sense of relief, you know, just to be of oneself. So anyways, but again, like your principal might not like that. Your boss might not like that. And so, you know, but just to notice like, well, what is my egoic nature like? Is it overly serious? And if so, can I relax? Can I relax a little bit? You know, when I was with my teacher and on retreats, I was just so dead serious. I was like this the whole time. And he'd say, you know, it'd be like right middle of him giving satsang, and he would say, okay, now Craig's going to get up and he's going to show us, you know, he's going to do a dance performance that he's been working on in the last little bit, and it's a spontaneous intuitive dance. He's going to interpretive dance, you know. And I'd be like, don't you dare, you know. He'd say, get up there, Craig. And of course I'd get up there and I wouldn't be able to be serious anymore. You know, I wouldn't be able to be in Ramana Maharshi monk mode. I had to get up and loosen up a little bit. As was one of the ways he would humiliate me into relaxing. It's one way of putting it. So anyways, don't take it too seriously, Kyle. Open, and enjoy your childlike self. Yeah, good to see you. All right. Okay. Let's see here. Looking at the time, just ask that your questions are clear and direct. Let's hear from Jacob. Jacob, are you here?
Hi, yes, I am. Beautiful to see everyone and to be here today. So lately I've just really been sitting with, you know, trying to be as authentic as I can and really living more of that truth. And, you know, when I am hanging out with certain people, I do notice that, you know, I am getting, say, affected by their, you know, their beliefs or their energy. And, you know, there's a subtle need to, you know, not be authentic or not be my true self around them, whether it's like family or friends. And I've been playing a lot with that and trying to really be as much as I can, instead of trying to, say, do the practice of meditation to try and be in a certain way. And that over time as well, like I've, I guess with my question, because I have been doing a lot of practicing and a lot of sitting, and that can create a lot of overwhelm, and I can be very ungrounded and not really functionable. Mm-hmm. So I have been called lately to just kind of chill out on the practice a bit and maybe do a lighter practice, not as long as what I would normally do. Because generally when I finish, it's like, well, I've come back to reality. I'm a bit very airy-fairy and not able to function to, normal fundamental things. So yeah, I guess, how can I maybe integrate more of that truth, even if it is from a higher realm, but be more grounded and balanced in the doing and the being?
Yeah, good question. So a big part of it has to do with giving yourself full permission to fail in that. And so just to relax totally around the doing and being. And I would encourage you, like one of the things that my teacher did with me is he would have me meditate, for hours and hours and hours. And then immediately he'd throw me into something that required a lot of mental thought and maybe, emotional sensitivity. And, I'd have to all of a sudden lead a group or gather a bunch of people up, and he'd put us to work right away. And so we'd have to, we'd go from being just ripped wide open to all of a sudden to be ridiculously practical and physical, or, working with emotions or whatever it was, or in group work. And it was, to me, it always seemed really harsh at first, or like disjointed. Like there's these two different worlds, the world of silence and then the world of action and engagement. But more and more, as he just kept throwing us back and forth into those two, eventually that inner dividing line that I had made, it no longer existed anymore. And the mistake most people make is they get into silence and really high spiritual states. And then they have this idea of, I have to be perfect in a certain way when I'm with others. I think you used the word authentic. I want to be authentic and in alignment and this and that. And oftentimes then we have another character that comes in the room, the character of the spiritual superego that's judging us and this type of thing. And I encourage you just to throw him out. And, like if I'm really ripped wide open, which, well, I tend to be all the time now, but say in the past, and then, thrown into like, say, some kind of egoic doing of some sort. A lot of times as I just play the card of just getting comfortable with being ripped wide open, because I was like, I see the choice that I can jump right back into my egoic mind and my personality, that type of thing. Or I could just kind of fumble around a little bit in this big spaciousness and see if this spaciousness can speak. Like, what would it say? A lot of times it says a lot less. And then people might say to you, things like, hey, you're being a little quiet or silent. Is everything okay? Which I would say, yeah, I'm just feeling incredibly silent right now. I'm feeling incredibly silent. Or sometimes there'd be a lot of energy moving through me. And I'd say, gosh, Craig, you're being kind of wild right now. I'd say, oh yeah, there's a lot of energy moving through me. So I apologize if I'm, taking up a lot of space or a lot of energy here. And I would just acknowledge what was happening. what was happening. And so, part of, what integration really is learning how to drive this big vehicle of awakening. And it's a much bigger vehicle. When I first learned how to drive, my first car was a 73 Super Beetle. And so it's actually a pretty small car, Volkswagen Bug. And so driving a small car is really easy. And then at one point, if you ever drove an old Volkswagen, all they do is break down. So at one point, I had this aunt who died, and she had this giant car that somehow I inherited. It was what I call an Oldsmobile Buick. That's an Oldsmobile and a Buick combined, smashed together in one car. So it's like a floating couch. That's a mile long. A lot of times, like we'd call it driving a boat. And when you're driving that car, you have to be a lot more present because it takes up more room and space. And it's just like driving a boat through traffic. It's ridiculous. And then after that, I got a 78 microbus, a VW, like hippie bus. And that, it's like you're steering above the wheels. So your steering's not out in front of you. It's like you're above the wheels. And it's got, it goes really far behind you, but there's nothing in between you. Like the bumper is, 3 inches in front of your knee in the microbus. And so the thing with spiritual awakening is it's just like driving different kinds of cars. When you first get into it, it's going to be a little bit weird. It's going to feel awkward, but you better learn how to drive that car. And ultimately, you want to know how to drive that car. You want to know how to drive the car that you're in. If I'm trying to drive, the VW Bug when I'm in the VW bus, I'm going to mess it up. And a lot of people with, awakening, they try to come back into their ego and drive the ego from a place of purity or something. And it just gets real wonky. Versus just giving yourself permission to jump off the cliff of awakening, the cliff of enlightenment, the cliff of freedom. And then you can ask yourself, like, does freedom act in the world? Or is it just dumb nothingness? And most of us think that, meditator's mind is just dumb nothingness as soon as we walk into reality. But it's simply not true. If you let meditator's mind come into reality, you might notice it's very precise and yet incredibly spacious. You may notice it's just incredibly vast and empathetic. And it meets with people, it speaks with people in a much different way than the quote unquote authentic ego or authentic personality. But you have to give yourself permission to step into this big boat and, get in a couple accidents, like bump around a little bit till you get your bearings, and you'll begin to realize, oh, this is a much more desirable way to live from this hugeness. Then at the end of meditation, we let go of the hugeness and we immediately step into our egoic nature. Then you have that bipolar experience, which will always feel like you're off. Like you're off or disjointed or just doesn't feel right just to have a bipolar, life. And so this hugeness, it is a great question. Like, well, what does it have to say? Does it have an intelligence? Does it have a desire or a motive? It's going to be greatly different than the desire or motive of ego. Does it have a desire? Of course. Like God had the desire to create a world and trillions of life forms. And that same desire is living through you. And what you find is, as we give ourselves permission to let the bigness speak, then we no longer feel inwardly divided. And integration just happens. It's happening versus trying to integrate, trying to do, trying to sort it out, trying. But again, like, it's so helpful to let yourself fail in this department. And you will, like we all will fail, because again, like you get in a big car or truck, or you drive a boat one day, like you might bump into the dock. And that's going to be part of the fun. Part of the fun. So play around with it and just see what comes forward. But the thing that most of us have is we have an inward bias, and the ego is saying, I want to control. I want to control what I say, who I say it to, when I say it. I want to control the outcome or this or that. Whereas when you step into this ripped, wide open space, you're really letting go of control. And things can get pretty messy, but in a divine kind of way. Like if any of us lived at the time of Christ or hanging out with Christ, you'd see like, wow, things are really messy and wild. They're really disruptive. Like this force that's coming through this man. But it's absolutely divine. Absolutely divine. And there's different times in the Bible. If I was one of those scholars, I could quote John, 3:7 or whatever. But there's all these times when the disciples came forward and they tried to kind of wrangle Jesus in, or the rabbis tried to wrangle him in, and he wouldn't have it. Pontius Pilate even tried to wrangle him in and just said, will you just say like you're not the Son of God? Just then I won't have to put you on the cross. Can you just say you're not that? And Christ, he's like, no, I'm huge. I'm not going to bow before practical reality. I'm going to upend. I'm going to pull the carpet out from practical reality. And I say this often, but it drives my wife crazy because the way I talk to people, just random people in the streets, because they're like, who is this guy talking to me this way? Because I just say whatever wants to flow. I'm not judging, thinking, is this a spiritual thing to say, or it's not spiritual? Am I bad? Am I wrong? I just let it flow. And so see what happens. And again, like if the ego gets sometimes the ego can come in and co-opt it a little bit, and that happens. Don't judge yourself, just course correct. Because it feels like junk when the ego comes in and like, that wasn't the right thing, and then you let go of it and you're back in a space of intimacy again with life or with whoever you're meeting with. Anyways, good to see you, Jacob. Thanks for having you. Yeah. All right. Let's hear from Kirsten here. Hi, Kirsten.
Hi, Craig.
Hey, and I did get your email, and I will sort that out with you. Thanks for emailing me again, and I apologize.
No problem. I just wanted to ask you about resistance. So I had been noticing, for years, when I meditate, I have an incredible amount of mental activity. Whereas years before that, I would be able to enter into silence pretty easily. Mm-hmm. So it's been about 10 years that it's just constant rumination while I meditate. And so I, sensed into it today and was noticing resistance. And when I sensed into the resistance, I felt anger. And when I sensed anger, I noticed it was an anger with God. Mm-hmm. Because I have been continuing to meditate, but it's just this constant kind of thick layer. And so I wanted to know how to work with this resistance.
I'm angry at God about what? Or for what?
About not being able to abide in being like I used to.
I'm mad at God because I can't abide in being.
Yes, or the abiding in being, I sense into it, and it's so small in comparison with the amount of noise that's constantly happening, like a static
Mm-hmm.
that's constantly happening.
Yeah. So let me just ask you some fun questions. Are you comfortable with anger?
I have become comfortable with it. Yes, over the years, I definitely have made room for that.
Okay. And so then what are we resisting?
Um,
Or do we
I
need to
think it's
become
a
more, even
feeling of
more comfortable?
disempowerment, of feeling powerless to be able to plug in more deeply,
Mm-hmm.
and a
Yeah.
feeling of missing out.
Yeah. Yeah. So the anger absolutely can be a doorway. So anger is a great doorway to power. And when I say that, do you trust that, or is that something you'd be happy to step
Believe
into
that.
your anger?
Yes. No, I have definitely experienced metabolizing anger and becomes power.
Yeah.
It's very clear to me.
Yeah.
Yes.
And so when the resistance comes, I encourage you to give yourself full permission to be absolutely and ridiculously as angry as you can absolutely be at God, life, the universe, and just let it rip, let it flow, and see what's on the other end of the anger. Oftentimes there'll be great power and great silence. But sometimes that anger has to really run itself out. It has to kick and scream and fight and moan. But if you can get into it and really feel into it energetically and let it rip, oftentimes one of the things I would do is I'd give myself full permission to be angry at God and, speak to God, scream to God, shout to God. And what I found was, like I'm in radical intimacy with God. Through just this constant communication, even if the communication was, this sucks and I hate this and I can't believe, why would you do this to me? And this isn't right, and God damn it, this is taking forever. And, there's these old Hindu stories, yogic stories of, it's a funny story. I'll probably butcher it, but there was like two guys basically walking around a mountain. And one was screaming basically screw you to God the whole time, in Sanskrit, of course, and the other one was saying, like Om Shri Ram Jai Ram Jai Jai Ram. But the one who was, the holy pious one, he stopped and he took a little nap, and then he saw a beautiful girl and chased her a little bit. And they went to get something to eat. And at the end of the day, the one who was angry at God was the one who was enlightened, because on the tip of his tongue all day long was God, God, God. Even though it came in the form of, I hate you, God, you drive me crazy, this isn't fair, God. It was just God was on his mind. He was in constant dialogue with God the entire time. And so I encourage you just to continue to open to the anger and to notice, like, am I resistant to the anger? Am I resistant to the feeling of anger?
I am resistant to the lack of intimacy. I am angry at the lack of intimacy with God.
Yeah.
I have felt very much in the past. And it's been years that I've been trying to.
Yeah. Yeah. And so when you are expressing your anger to God, do you feel that God is there, or do you feel like you're just yelling into empty space?
There's a feeling of why have you abandoned me?
Beautiful. Beautiful. So, okay. So that leads us into something different that's under anger. So what is that feeling? Like the feeling of why have you abandoned me? It can come off.
It's a lone, hopeless feeling of being unplugged from God.
Yeah.
The longing, the anger
Yeah.
about feeling the longing
Yeah.
and not being able to plug in.
Yeah. And so if you really feel into that, doesn't that feel more like sadness?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. And so what your body's telling you, what your experience is telling you, is you need to plug into that sadness and to feel that sadness fully and completely. Now, the ego will say, I don't want to feel that, because when I start to do that, I might descend into the hell realm of hopelessness or helplessness. But this is where I think you used the word, I can't remember what word you used. In regards to anger, you said something about digesting it or transforming it or
Metabolizing it.
Metabolizing it. That's the word you used. So when you metabolize that sadness, the sadness of being abandoned by God, what we open to on the other realm of that is a childlike intimacy and a feeling of being a child of God. A child of God. And so it's through that doorway of tenderness, through the willingness to feel sadness, the heart becomes radically tender and innocent. And then, of course, deeply intimate. The egoic fear is if I open that door, I'll fall into the pit of hopelessness. And so you have to give yourself permission to open that door. So you said you got comfortable opening the door to anger. When we let anger kind of burn itself out, you see, oh, there's also great sadness here. Can I give myself permission to feel that sadness? Sadness melts. Say that again.
The thought that comes up is it is endless.
Yeah.
The sadness.
And so that's the fear. That's the fear. If I open the door, that's the pit. I'll go into that pit and it will be endless.
Yeah.
And so you have a choice now. You can say, I'm going to keep that door closed because I believe that it is endless. Or I'm going to open that door and I'm going to feel it fully because I truly trust that the God of love loves me, that the God of love made me, that I am a child of this God. And see, it becomes a doorway of trust through opening this doorway. And so with trust and with tenderness, we melt the walls of division and then we experience intimacy again. If we don't trust, we keep that door closed and we shield our heart, and you will feel like God is lacking, like God is not here. You'll feel unplugged from God. So if you shield your heart, God will say, like, hey, we're not, you're putting a shield between you and me. And that's not going to work. So it's a willingness to let the heart break and see, is it going to just break into a million pieces and I'll be left for dead? Or is it going to break open? Is it going to break open? And so the normal thought is, yeah, it's just going to break and I'll be left for dead, abandoned forever. Or you have to be kind of crazy like I was and you say, okay, it's gonna break and break and break and break, and then it just breaks open. You're like, oh, there's so much love here, a ridiculous amount of love here. I'm not abandoned. I have not been cast out. God has not forsaken me. God has not forsaken me. I put up a wall between me and God because I was afraid of feeling something that I didn't think I could handle. And so, anyways, yeah, good to see you, Kirsten. Good to see you. Yeah. All right. Let's hear from Richard. Richard, are you here?
Hi there.
Hi, Richard.
Hi everyone. Good to see you. I was just thinking real quick as well, Kirsten, that, and I know that you're a therapist, diving into intense emotion can just cause an unwanted pendulating effect as well. And so perhaps being kind to that fear and titrating into the sadness. What would it be like to feel 5% or 10% of this right now and settle in with that and get comfortable and feel safe with that, and then move into 20%? Because you might, kick in and out if you go all the way in. That was just a quick thought. So real quick, I am leaving for Costa Rica on Friday for 3 months, which means that I won't be here during that time, just because it's not a big time zone difference, just because of the time of the trainings that I'll be attending are very early in the morning. And so I won't be able to make these late sessions. And so I just wanted to note that because I won't be here for 3 months. And I wanted to speak to my absence and kind of honor the community that's here. And I will miss you all very, very much during that time. And I'm just sending you lots of love, and we'll certainly be here in spirit. And so I'll get back late December. You'll probably see me early January. My question today, Craig, is about how to develop radical intimacy with Kundalini. I think so often we're hearing about Kundalini in the context of people having overwhelming symptoms in one way or another. And I'm kind of curious about what it means to develop a kind of radical, intimacy and almost like a love affair, with Kundalini. And so this is kind of before, this is dual. This is before you merge into oneness. But I want to sit there. Like, what does it mean to develop a love affair with Kundalini, even as you're perhaps experiencing a lot of difficult symptoms and things are hard, but you're just being drawn into a deeper intimacy. So whatever that brings forward, I would love to hear about that. Thank you.
Yeah, beautiful. Thanks, Richard. So I want to build upon what I said with Kirsten is do you trust? Like, do you trust in a Kundalini? So in order to fall in love, you have to trust the person fully and completely. And to fall in love, we don't allow there to be any walls. We don't want any walls between us and our lover. We just want to melt. We want to merge. We want to be like this with him. And what Richard brought forward is something quite practical, something very significant. Is the fact that a lot of people, when they open to this energy, is so overwhelming. And when the ego is overwhelmed, it shuts down because it doesn't trust. It doesn't trust. It's just like, I don't like this. This is too much. I can't handle this. This might hurt, or this does hurt. And so you have to, in a sense, love without, is it without abandon or with abandon? However you say it properly. You love where you just give yourself permission just to fall into it, to melt into it. No matter if it feels wonderful or difficult or painful. For me, I've always hated walls. I always hated walls. In fact, I've said this often to my wife. One day I'd like to have a house that was just a gigantic open space. And in one corner, we take all of our junk and just put it in that corner. And the rest of the place was just a big, gigantic open space, no walls. No walls. And in order to have no walls, you have to give yourself full permission to feel without shutting down. And so this love affair, for most people, it means they need to have courage, the courage to feel everything without, shutting or clenching or hiding or saying, oh, I can't handle this. So one of the things I would tell myself when I was having a difficult time would be, this is unto God, not unto death. This is unto God, not unto death. I'd ask myself, do I trust in God's way? Do I trust in God's intelligence? And always, right away, I'll always be like, oh yeah, like I trust in God. Does God know better than me? Yes. And so I'd let go of my egoic want for the symptoms to decrease or the intensity to be less, be less intense, and just say, like, this is what God is wanting. And I just have this, like an inner knowing and trust that God is working in me, through this force of Kundalini. And so it's that trust, the trust that allows one to fall madly in love with what this is, whether it's Kundalini or spiritual awakening or just whatever your experience is. There's a trust that this is exactly how it should be. There is intelligence here at play. Intelligence here at play. You feel a little bit more into it because it seems like there's something else here. And oftentimes I would communicate to it. If I was feeling overwhelmed by the energy, I'd say, hey, can you take it down a notch? Like, I have to go into this meeting right now, or I have to take care of my children or whatever. And oftentimes God would listen to me. If I say, hey, I need you to take it easy on me in this moment. And then I'd say afterwards, I'll give you my full attention. And God did. God would take it down a notch. And then after the meeting, turn it up a notch. And so it was kind of just, just communicating with it the same way you'd communicate with a lover, being real intimate, being very human with it. And giving it my full time and attention. Just like anytime you fall in love in the beginning, it's like that person means everything to you. Everything to you. And to me, there's something just really innocently beautiful about allowing oneself just to be enraptured by God. And the other thing is, I had often thought that God was doing the exact same thing to me. God was enraptured in Craig, was coming after Craig. God was not going to let Craig out of his grips. And so, the same way like you chase your lover chases you. And so even though mine, Kundalini awakening was very physical and very difficult on so many levels, I kind of saw it as a wild ride that me and God were on together. And so there's just this sense of like, we're doing this together. Her and I are doing this together. I need her, she needs me. Like, we are melting into each other. And, at some point, more and more as I opened just to what was here and then let her invade me and have her way with me. And at some point, all the walls dissolved, and I just realized, oh, her and I are one. It's not like Kundalini's outside of me or separate, but her and I are one. And seeing that in reality, you're falling in love with yourself. Falling in love with yourself. So anyways, the one last thing I'll say is, I'd even have, almost like a date with Kundalini. So if it was a Friday night or a Saturday night or Sunday morning or something, I'd either stay up real late and have a date with her, giving her my full attention, and just have an evening of ecstasy. Just, the different realms that she would show me and things she would open me to. And it just felt like euphoric bliss and freedom and the crazy states of nirvana and samadhi. And it was it's sweet. In fact, just even last night, like my wife went to bed real early last night, and I just stayed up super late dancing with her and the big moon outside. And even though my body, because I'm still really illin is the word I'm going to use. Last night, she just had me up dancing and just flooded with energy. And I felt like, I was 16 again in this body of mine, and running and dancing and jumping and singing, and just had this wondrous evening. And so I'll still do that. Of just, it's like a date with her, a date with me. And I love it, just to go, just like let all the walls, all the thoughts fall away, the rules that we have. Like my rules normally go to bed by 9:30, and I was up to 11:30 with her, just dancing and being wild. And so just having fun with it, and making a special evening every now and then, or special morning. And see, just like right now, I assume you're making a special 3 months where you give yourself permission. I did that off. I said, yeah, I'm going to give myself next 3 months. And I tell you, Richard, like people, if anyone wants to progress on the path, like taking 3 months and just diving deep, we grow by leaps and bounds, as your attention is not divided, it's not scattered, it's not all over the place. You are here. You are here. She is here. And things can really take off when we allow for this. And then eventually it just becomes a lifestyle. It becomes a way of being. A way of being. But life is like, life is really messy. Just like with any lover, you don't give her, or you don't give your partner time, they're going to disappear. They'll disappear. So you give it full time and attention, and the love grows deep. So anyways, a beautiful question. Richard, you'll be missed. So nice to have you. And yeah, I'll second what you said with Kirsten, sometimes titrate in and out. I'm a little bit more nutty. I just like to jump in and go for it. And but yeah, a lot of people do need to titrate in and out, because it can get a little bit it can be too much for the nervous system sometimes. Okay, here's a question that just popped in. Hi, Craig. Thank you. It spoke to me so much. One of my biggest fears is that I am letting something else take over my body, being possessed, going crazy when I let myself just be. But the fear always reveals itself to be unfounded. I am always the sanest when I let myself be in this place. Oh, yeah, so beautiful and so true. That there's a different type of intelligence that comes online. Like, we always think we're going to go crazy if we just let go. And you do go crazy. You go crazy in the sense that you step out of ego and you step into reality. So it'll feel absolutely crazy to your egoic nature. And as soon as you just drop into reality, you'll be like, oh my God, this feels so sane and peaceful and clear and vibrant and powerful. And yeah, the sanest I've ever been. Ursula, thank you so much. Yeah. We face fear and we discover sanity. How beautiful is that? Face fear and discover sanity. Okay. Looks like I did my part. For those of you whose questions I forgot or lost in the email somewhere, I apologize. Send them again. Looking forward to seeing you all again soon. And before we end, I'd like just to return this question we started in the beginning with. This whole path, it seems like, is about awakening, you stepping into what you are. And I invite you all to imagine, let's just assume that happened. You are what you are. You are the divine one. You are this grace. You are this light. You are this love. And so I ask you, how does this love want to serve the world? How does this love show up in the form of you? How does this love want to serve the world? How does this love show up in the form of you? And so good to see you all. Thank you all for the love and the support, generosity. Good night, everyone. Bye for now.